June 10th, 1912. There were 6 poor people that just got murdered when they were sleeping in their bed. The theory is there was a guy who no one knows, the crime is unsolved, sneaks into the Moore family house while they're away and just chills in the attic, just hangs out until the family comes home late at night before he just rips through them all. Anyways, so in the evening of June 9th, the family heads out to the nearby Presbyterian church where Sarah, the mother of the family, was coordinating Children's Day program. I don't even really know what that is. It just sounds churchy, and apparently the kids were all involved in some way. I don't know if you know at all what that kind of stuff is about. But anyways, she was like the head cheese and she organized stuff. So the family was out until about 9:30 on June 9th. It was close enough that they could walk to and from the church. And the way investigators think it went down was they were at the church until around 9:45 to 10 p.m. is when they think that the family got home. I guess it's important to say, too, I'm getting ahead of myself here. So you have the Moore family, which is Josiah and Sarah, which are the 2 parents. You have...
I think I'm looking at pictures of them.
They're pretty crummy pictures, but I'm surprised that all of them exist. I guess they were all over the newspapers for a while.
Who knew they had photographs back then?
Who knew? The kids, Herman, I don't know if they actually went by their full names here, but I'll just say it. Herman Montgomery, who was 11, Mary Catherine, 10 years old, Arthur Boyd, 7 years old, and Paul Vernon, 5 years old. These were the Moore family children, and they also had 2 guests that night, which were friends of Mary Catherine Moore. Catherine? Why did I say it like that? So you have 8-year-old, I'm going to say Ina May. Ina?
Okay.
Ina? How would you pronounce I-N-A? Ina?
I
Maybe?
don't know.
I don't know.
Is it German?
It's Ina and Lena. I'm just going to go with that.
Whoa.
Ina May, 8 years old, and Lena Gertrude Stillinger, 12 years old. They were all buddies. They all went to church. They all came home. It's 10 p.m. The scene is set. Okay. Meanwhile, they don't know that there's some dude chilling in the attic. I guess he was smoking cigarettes because they found like two burnout like cigarette butts chilling up there.
I think everyone smoked cigarettes back then.
Probably it was like breakfast. It's
Yeah.
just how you started your day. So the story comes to light around 7 a.m. on June 10th when their neighbor Mary Peckham goes outside, like that old school farm life. Like she went out to hang laundry and basically started the daily chores. She was like, the Moores are not awake or out doing anything, at least. I wonder if there's something wrong. So she does the neighborly thing at the time and she just waltzes over and knocks on the door. She didn't get an answer. So she does the even more neighborly thing. She walks around to the Moore's barn and lets the chickens out. And she actually calls Josiah's brother, Ross Moore, to come over and see, if he can get their attention. So Ross Moore comes over. He tries the door, receives no answer. Luckily, because he's family, he has a key to the residence. So he goes inside, not very far, because right inside the parlor is a bedroom. He looks in and he sees 2 dead bodies.
Wow.
Not good.
No.
So he just goes back outside and he's like, hey, we might want to get some police down here. So that's what Mary Peckham does. So what's his name? I have it somewhere and it's eluding me. Henry Horton. Now that's
Henry Horton.
Henry Horton. That's the sheriff that I want around.
Yeah.
All right, so he shows up, and after his walk through the house, he basically just says, "Hey, like everyone in here is dead, like they were bludgeoned to death." So what happened, or what people think happened, is this killer just chilled up in the attic, waited until they went to sleep. They think he came down around midnight, and he came down out of the attic and hit the master bedroom where Josiah and Sarah were sleeping. And he killed both of them with the blunt side of the axe. He went around the upstairs where all the children's rooms are, did the same thing to all them. Like, he just beat them in the face with the blunt side of the axe. Then he circled back around to the parents' room and went to town on the father's face even more, to the point where he was like missing his eyes after it was all done.
Gross.
He went downstairs where the two guest children were sleeping. And this, I mean, it gets a little more disturbing, I guess, because Lena Sillinger, 12, was the only victim that they think was not asleep during the attack, because the way her body was positioned on the bed, it looks like she may have like been alerted or tried to struggle. Also, she had received like a wound on her arm, like she had tried to fight back, and her nightgown was pushed up, like she may have been molested or sexually assaulted before or after. So that's unfortunate.
I mean, I could believe that if a bunch of people are being murdered, you might wake up. Also, if those were the kids that don't live there, you probably have a hard time sleeping in not your home.
I know I would. Like, I never sleep well anywhere else, like unless it's my own bed. It's weird.
Sometimes I don't even sleep well in my own bed. Other nights I sleep for a solid 10 hours and don't wake up.
The only thing that's weird is I don't find it hard to believe that, like, when he went to the children's rooms, like if someone's sleeping and you hit them hard enough right in the face, like you might not kill them on the first hit, but you're probably going to knock them unconscious. So you're probably not going to make...
I don't know what it's like to hit a body with an axe, you know?
Oh, you should
but
try
in my
it sometime.
head right
it's
now,
great.
No. Although, it's like that one episode of Killing Eve. Here you go. No, I'm not going to do it. Don't worry. But it just, I would think that maybe you wouldn't just die right away.
Yeah. I do find it a little weird that in the two situations where there's two people in the room, that it wouldn't startle the other person. Especially Josiah and Sarah, because I believe they'd be sleeping in the same bed. You would think between the noise and like the motion of it, that something would happen. Also, there was marks in the ceiling in the master bedroom where it looks like the axe had hit the ceiling repeatedly, like as he was like chopping downwards. So that would be making noise as well. So I'm not sure. You know, I mean, maybe like because the girls were so young downstairs, maybe they kind of just panicked and like froze. It's not like even if they were awake and like started screaming, no one would hear them anyways. You know what I mean? So
yeah,
who knows?
Probably just the axe murder.
She was the older sister of the two. I would assume if there was going to be someone that sleeps through something like that, it's probably the younger kid. A lot of times they kind of just
What are you trying to say about the younger sibling?
Fall asleep and you can't wake them up for
sleeps through
anything.
Someone pounding on your window that's right next to your head.
Something like
9
that,
phone calls. Yeah. Yeah, I can relate.
So I did say before that the authorities think that the killer circled back to the master bedroom, and that's because there was like a pair of shoes sitting by the bed, and what it looked like had happened was blood had leaked into the shoe and then was kicked over at a later time because there was blood inside the shoe and under the shoe. So it seemed like after the first attack, the shoe had blood that dripped into it, and on his way back in, he kicked it over and then it spilled out. That was kind of the hint that gave it away. There was like a couple things about the scene that seemed a little odd. So all of the windows were like covered up, either by like curtains or something. I guess there were 2 that didn't have any window coverings. All the doors in the house were still locked. So I don't know how secure locks were at the time. I can't imagine they were too great. But still, I'm not even
sure people locked doors then.
It's possible that they didn't. I mean, I know people in my town didn't lock doors apparently like 20 years ago.
I was going to say, I don't think people started learning about locking their doors until like 80s or 90s.
It's possible. Every victim had their face covered with something, like some kind of cloth. Now, I read it was after they were killed. I don't know.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not sure.
That seems to make sense. I don't know.
Yeah. There was a kerosene lamp found at the foot of the bed of the parents. And then there was a similar kerosene lamp found at the bed of the Stillinger girls' beds. They were like set up the same way, where the chimney was off and the wick was turned all the way back. I don't really know. I don't know the anatomy of a kerosene lamp that well, but I assume that maybe the lamps were there for personal use and that he had just maybe disassembled them so there wouldn't be any chance of light. I'm not sure. It seems like he tried to clean up the axe that he used, which apparently belonged to Josiah. So whoever it was got into their house without being detected and also used one of their own tools. I doubt it was hard to find something because they lived on a farm. I would just assume that stuff would be around all over the place. So there was a pan of bloody water on the kitchen table and a plate of uneaten food. So he tried to clean up. I don't know if he got the food out and then just got disturbed by something and didn't actually eat it. Also, there was I don't know why this is included, but there's a slab of bacon in the bedroom.
Sure.
It's like a 2-pound slab of bacon on the floor in the downstairs bedroom where the 2 guest girls were.
It was probably a snack for later.
It was apparently wrapped in a dish towel, and there was an almost identical piece of bacon in the ice box in the kitchen. I'm not sure if that was that's a sweet calling card if someone wanted to start that. Just like,
I don't even know how to make my thoughts come into words.
There's a lot going through my head. Slab of bacon.
But my first question was bacon cheap back then? Who's just wasting bacon,
It may have been. I mean, I know cuts of meat have come in and out of popularity, so I don't know.
Bacon probably wasn't as trendy back then.
I wonder, it may not have been popular. I don't know when the curing process went through. Maybe they didn't even have bacon back then. Maybe it was just...
I would believe
maybe it was just the belly. Because that's all it is. Although you know that.
What? Listen, right now we're in a state of a certain someone, we like to call him Al. Hey, buddy. is always asking me the most random questions about meat. I'm like, I don't freaking know. And he's like, what department do you work in? I'm like, they brought me back here to tame all the men. Anyways, back to murder.
Anyways, so this is unsolved, but there's a couple suspects that have some information on. Some others are pretty far-fetched, but the interesting ones, we'll start with Andrew Sawyer. This guy, I don't know where he came from, but the story goes there's a man named Thomas Dyer, and he was a bridge foreman for the Burlington Railroad. And this guy, Andrew Sawyer, just came waltzing up to him at 6 a.m. on June 10th. Wait, what day are we talking about here? Yes, June 10th. And he was wearing a suit, and he was just like, hey, can I have a job? And this guy's like, that's how this works. It's 1912. Sure. And
I
guess
sometime.
You'd probably figure out how to pull it off.
If I'm lucky.
Yeah. So I guess over the next couple of days or weeks, this Sawyer guy just started making people uneasy around him because he would just talk about things related to the murder. Like he would say he was in Villisca the night it happened. He heard the people being killed. And he would just talk about this weird stuff. Like he knew where it happened, and he would like be able to point out like certain things around the area. Like this is how I did this, or, whatever. I think he was just talking bullcrap. But the one of his coworkers that he was around telling these stories to just happened to be his boss's son. And of course he went and told his dad, and then Dyer just turned him in to the police. But it seems like he had a proven alibi when they digged into it, and he was actually in Osceola, Iowa on that evening because he was arrested for vagrancy, and they just plopped him on a train around 11 p.m. to send him away because that's what they did then. And I guess there would be no good logistical way for him to be able to pull it off. I don't know how far those two locations are away from each other. Then the next suspect is Reverend George Kelly, which
it's probably him.
It's do you have opinions?
It was the Reverend that got me.
It's definitely a red flag. But I guess this guy, he was a traveling minister, and he was at the Children's Day services that evening with the family. But I guess he has a history of having mental breakdowns as a child, which makes people, look at you like you're unstable.
He probably also was talking to him.
But also he was accused of peeping and asking girls to pose nude for him. Like that wasn't allowed back then.
Wow. That's where they allow it these days, apparently. It's because never mind.
No, go ahead.
No, I was gonna say something, and the feminists will come after me, and then they won't believe that I'm one of them. So
okay,
so never mind.
This guy says that he left town before it happened, but then he confessed to it, and then no one believed him. And the following weeks, he just became obsessed, and he was writing letters and contacting authorities about the murder. He claims that he witnessed it, but everyone knows that this guy's a borderline nut job, so they just kept shaking him off. Then he was arrested 2 years later for sending obscene material to women.
How do you even send obscene material to women back then?
I believe the Postal Service existed.
Okay.
So he had a secretary job and he was taking applications for it, and he was just, I don't know how that exchange goes, like, oh, hey, I liked your application. Here's a picture for you. I don't understand. But anyway, that's kind of how it went down. So he was actually sent to a mental hospital in Washington, D.C. And he kept making claims that he did it. Well, did the axe murders, that is. And he was arrested for the murder in 1917, but after he was actually interrogated, he was acquitted because, shocker, he's a nutball. The rest of them honestly get like a little bit more far-fetched because they don't really have much to stand on. You have Frank F. Jones, which was a former employer of Josiah. Josiah left his business to start a competing business, and it did well. So people around the area just thought that those two just like had a reason to clash. And allegedly, Josiah Moore had an affair with Jones's daughter-in-law at one point. So also people didn't think that that's that well. William Mansfield and Henry Lee Moore, which no relation, even though it's hard to say.
Sure, it was
back
a
then.
common name.
These guys both pretty much fall under the category of people think that Frank Jones like basically hired these two guys as hitmen. They're in no way related, but they're two suspects that are under the same suspicion. All of that kind of just falls through. William Mansfield has a payroll record that puts him in Illinois at the time, so he was dismissed. And people believed it may have been Henry Lee Moore because he was under suspicion of killing his mother and his grandmother in Villisca just a few months ago with an axe. So people were like, hey, could have been this guy. You know, he likes his axes.
He was probably like, maybe these are my cousins.
It's just the opposite road that people take to their cousins, like than Alabama or something.
Uh-huh.
You know, just kill him with an axe instead of doing other things. Anyways, the only interesting one is Paul Mueller. Since you're familiar with this, do you know that name at all?
No. Or
Okay.
I just don't remember enough.
So this is, I think someone's trying to attach someone to this because they have something similar to the same MO. So Paul Mueller is a possible serial killer. Two people, Bill James and his daughter, Rachel McCarthy James, wrote a book called The Man from the Train, where they're attaching Paul Mueller to all of these killings. We're talking like 59 people in 14 different incidences across the United States over a decade. And what this guy supposedly did is he struck families that were near railroad tracks around midnight while the victims were sleeping. Using the blunt side of an axe, he would leave the axe in plain sight in the victim's home after he was done, and he would cover victims. Well, this says he would cover the victims before striking them to stop the splatter of blood all over the room. He would cover the windows from the inside and lock the doors before leaving, which all of this sounds pretty spot on, which is why I was confused about the face coverings in this murder, because it does make sense. You know, if you're going to smack someone in the face with a blunt object, maybe you don't want to spray yourself down with blood, especially if you're going to do it to 6 people.
Well, I mean, are you really a psychopath if you're not willing to get some blood on you?
Maybe he's an OCD psychopath and he just doesn't want to have to do the cleanup.
I feel like OCD and psychopaths just go hand in hand, but what do I know?
Okay.
I'm really just basing it off like watching Dexter, probably.
So basically, this Paul Mueller guy, they're thinking that the axe murders here are just a small part in this large chain of murders that happened across the United States. So that book is called The Man from the Train, which I might have to read that one.
The Man from the Train.
The Man from the Train.
Okay, Hank, Bill, calm down.
So even though like it was 1912, they didn't have much in the way of like science to help them, but in almost every way imaginable that you could botch evidence, they did on this case. So I don't even know if it would matter all that much. Like people would just walk in and start moving stuff and taking pictures. So it's not really a shock that they didn't figure out who it was. I don't know the details, but everything that I saw, like people would come into the house and start just rummaging through stuff, moving stuff around. Like they would like move the bed sheets off of them and like cover them back up all the time. I guess fingerprints were a thing in 1912, but they were still pretty new. So I don't think the methods of extracting were that great. And with all the different people that were coming and going from the house, I think everything just got contaminated and they couldn't really use fingerprints at all. Which actually, let me see. I actually have some information on fingerprinting just because I was bored. Sure. And I just figured, hey, I'd look this up. They started to fingerprint to identify criminals in what year do you think they started doing that in? Since you're the history buff.
Oh, okay. Well, I mean, this takes place in what, like 1712, just about 19, whatever. In my head, I want to guess like the 70s because how do they know anything? But it sounds like it's going to be prior to the 200
years.
I'm just saying, what's the difference between 1712 and 1912?
Oh boy. Okay.
People are going to hate me.
They started using fingerprints for identifying criminals in 1901.
You know what? I just immediately wanted to take back my 70s guess, but then you started talking, but then I was like, wait, the Zodiac started doing things before the 70s. But whatever, I was wrong.
You're ridiculous.
But can I just share what I was close at guessing recently?
Sure.
The amount of coins in Ryan's unicorn jar. I guessed it was about $40 and it was like $37. So I at least know a thing or two. But it was Price is Right style, so we both lost. We both went over.
Okay.
I'll shut up now.
Now, here's a question for you. How long have people been using fingerprints as a means of identification? Not to like identify criminals, but like as kind of like a signature.
1960.
You're
my
off,
answer a little.
You're off by, I would say, about 2,000 years.
Wow. I didn't even know people had fingerprints back then.
Yeah, so there's actually evidence of like clay tablets and seals and stuff from like ancient Egypt.
So in the year 21.
Actually 200 BC. There was
don't get me started.
There was contracts. What is it? Did you get triggered by the use of BC?
I really don't even remember what like letters we'd wire anymore. You know? That's before Christ. Is that right? That sounds right.
Yes, the before times. There were contracts that were signed with fingerprints in Babylon. How about that?
I don't really care.
People use their brains all the way back then. Imagine that.
Basically, just don't tell Big Jim. He'll try and take me to church.
Okay. But oh yeah, to back up my point about like they didn't have anything besides fingerprint testing back then. DNA profiling actually wasn't developed until 1984. So imagine
that's
that.
about what I was guessing. We can
Wait,
just
what?
pretend.
Okay, whatever.
You know?
Also, you can book daytime tours or overnight stays at the murder house.
No. No overnight stays. People shouldn't do that.
You can, although it's a little tricky with COVID now. But also,
People shouldn't do anything now, but
an overnight stay is like, it's almost $500.
wow.
I think it's a little steep, but apparently it's a real hot spot for paranormal investigators. You know, because obviously if that many people die there, there's gonna be ghosts.
That's what I'm saying. But for $500, that bed that I get to sleep in better be freaking comfortable.
You don't even get a bed. They say
why
you
would
should
I pay $500?
you should bring a sleeping bag
No.
and a pillow. And
I'm bringing an air mattress.
if it's if it's fall or winter,
Whoa.
you should bring.
COVID brain.
I'm having a stroke. You should
We laugh
bring.
now. Joke's on me when you don't show up for work tomorrow because you're dead.
You should
Try not
also
to die
bring
today.
a warm coat because you're going to be chilly, because the entire house was a dump, but someone bought it
No.
and renovated it to be back to its original condition from 1912.
What a freak.
Basically. But it is like registered as a historical place in the town now, so now it's kind
Only
of
because
protected.
I said freak. Just one more tangent,
Okay.
I think.
It has to be about Jim.
Yes. Kate, do you see Kellen today? No, Jim. Still haven't seen Kellen. Huh. Cody's off today. That's all I'll say about that.
God. We need a more graceful way to end our episodes. So I think you should
Auf
send people
Wiedersehen.
off.
Oh,
That is
was that not
abrupt.
good enough?
That is abrupt.